Schenck versus United States was a 1919 United States Supreme Court case. Schenck versus United States involved Charles T. Schenck and the United States. An important event at the time was the draft, which was happening for World War I. During the time of World War I, the Espionage Act of 1917, which intended to prohibit interference with military operations or recruitment, and the Sedition Act of 1918 made it illegal to criticize the government. Both acts were passed during the war and were highly opposed. Charles Schenck was a member of the Executive Committee of the Socialist Party in Philadelphia. Schenck was the General Secretary and oversaw the printing and mailing of over 15,000 flyers to draftees. In them, Schenck urged the draftees to not submit to the draft on the grounds that it was involuntary servitude and thus was unconstitutional. Charles Schenck was arrested for violating the Espionage Act of 1917 and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Schenck, however, appealed the conviction to the Supreme Court, stating that the Espionage Act was a violation of his First Amendment right to the freedom of speech.
The final decision of the court was unanimous in favor of the United States, saying that the government was right in restricting Schenck's speech because he was posing a threat to the United States.
In the court, the most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing a panic. The question in every case is whether the words used are in such a circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to prevent.
This gave the Supreme Court the ability to assess court cases concerning free speech on a case-by-case basis, at least those going against the state's interest. And the clear and present danger test set forth by the clear and present danger doctrine was used to assess free speech and limitation thereof for about 50 years. The clear and present danger doctrine redefined the First Amendment in terms of war and crises. During a time of national or international crisis, a person's rights and free speech may be restricted in order to better protect those inside the United States and the functions of the government. Examples of these are during World War II, in the internment camps, and the Second Red Scare during the Cold War. During both of these, a person's rights and their freedoms of speech were restricted in order to protect the greater interests of the United States and the people in it. After the decision of Schenck versus the U.S., the Espionage Act was used to sentence people such as the Rosenbergs, who were American citizens executed for conspiracy to commit espionage relating to passing information about the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union. Daniel Ellsberg was responsible for the Pentagon Papers, and Edward Snowden, who leaked government information onto Wikipedia. Although the clear and present danger test was later replaced by the imminent lawless action test, which came from the Brandenburg versus Ohio court case approximately 50 years later, Schenck versus the United States still has an effect on how we as United States citizens view our rights of free speech today, and set the basis for the protection and limitation of speech according to the government's interests today and for years to come.